I'd like to invite Domenico Yanni DiNardo, Senior Vice President of Corporate Engagement and the Chief Development Officer for Mosaic Forest Management, one of our generous session sponsors, to the stage to introduce our next session.
Check, check. All right. Hi, everybody. How are you doing so far? It's great to be back at IROC, and what great sessions we have here today. I got to say, it's also heartwarming to finally watch Dallas Smith come out of his shell during the course of this conference. So it's nice to know Dallas is here in action. My name is Domenico Yanni DiNardo. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Development Officer at Mosaic Forest Management. It's great to be invited here and able to contribute to this event on Snuneymuxw and Tsleil-Waututh territory. Look, Mosaic Forest Management has been around for over 110 years. We are about 1/3 of the coastal forest industry by volume. We've got a carbon credit project on the go called the Big Coast Forest Climate Initiative. And we were the first forest owner in Canada to get Progressive Aboriginal Relations Gold Level certification. We're here to talk about a fireside chat. We're going to have a fireside chat, triple Venti soy, no foam, Latte, Weewakai business success stories, that kind of thing. Look, Mosaic's had a lot of history of working with Weewakai. It's been a real pleasure. I've had opportunities to work on commercial and policy and golf projects with our fireside chatter. They keep getting better at all those, and I keep trying, and it's important to try. I got to tell you, with our fireside chatter here from Weewakai, don't let his quiet and jovial demeanor fool you. It belies a business powerhouse built on the intelligence of all of his ancestors. So I'm going to ask you to put your hands together and give a big IROC welcome for Dallas Smith and the one, the only Weewakai Chief Ronnie Chickite!
One day I'll come out of my shell, Domenico. One day. And you'll hear what I truly think. How you doing, Ron?
Oh, this is different than what we're normally doing.
Yes. The name of the title is interesting because obviously, you know, your band's created some success and some awareness around the Starbucks franchise, and it's ironic that we have a panel for a fireside chat named with this, and neither you or I drink coffee.
Yeah, no, it's quite ironic growing up on boats and never once drinking a cup of coffee, right?
I'm glad you put it that way, because you do very well on a boat still. You're an accomplished skipper. I know you deal in herring, you deal in salmon, you deal in prawns. I can't drink coffee, and I got fired instantly at the end of the season, but we'll talk about that next year maybe. You know, as we got together to talk about the panels we were going to do, we were just trying to figure out how do we keep this genuine discussion going. And some of the people were teasing me like, you could have named IROC Dallas and Friends. But it's true. You know, I've been lucky enough to be around for a long time and work with a lot of people, and when they've traveled on to different circles, you know, I've kept that relationship open, and so it's been a great opportunity to bring together people from throughout my life. I like to say I'm the the First Nations, Forrest Gump. I just happen to be there, you know, when Kennedy did this, or I happen to be there when someone did that, but I happened to be here when a new chief came into town. Weewakai Nation was led eloquently and fiercely by Chief Ralph Dick for probably the better part of 20 years. And then Brian Asu took over for a couple years, and When Chief Ronnie Chickite became chief of the Weewakai Nation, the average age of council dropped about 24 years, in all seriousness. And he's really been at the epicenter of realizing the potential. His predecessors had worked very valiantly on protecting their rights and title. They built a lodge, they got that homeland built up in Quinsam. But there is still so much there to be unlocked that needed some confidence and needed a good steady hand. And Ronnie spent some time on council learning the ropes, and then decided he's going to throw his hat in the ring. And I think that's really an important story, because we have to be able to soak in some of those things to understand what isn't working. It's not that things were getting worse, but things weren't just achieving the goals that they had hoped to achieve. And in the time frame that Ronnie's been at the head of the council table, they've had more younger people joining their council ranks, and the level of opportunities set by some of the predecessors have started to realize their potential. So, we could start in a few places. I thought about starting at Super Bowl, but again, as I alluded to teasing Chris Roberts, there's only 4 people who signed my paycheck. You're one of them, so I won't be too hard on the Niners today, because they've beaten the Cowboys the last few years in the playoffs. For those of you who played in the Nanwakolas Corporate Challenge, last year I had to wear a beautiful San Francisco 49ers jersey because Ronnie's team put us to the curb 2 years in a row, and instead of betting money or dinners or things like that, we're like, okay, it's 92 degrees out, you're gonna wear this jersey.
And what better way to hurt his pride, knowing his Cowboys jersey wasn't being worn, he'd have to wear a Niners jersey. Like, that hurts, I think, a lot more than taking your money.
True. I mean, that hurts in so many different ways, and I'm not gonna get emotional about it, but.
Well, he gives his money up pretty easy at the poker table, too, though. So it's one of those things.
Well, I like to invest in my leadership. But in all seriousness, you and I, kind of the same age group, we sort of, when I moved to Campbell River in the early 90s, we played pool together. You were in all the various functions that were there. And then I remember going to my first Liquid Oak Nations Treaty Society. We had a fun baseball day. And like I said, the average age of council was pretty high up there. And so I'm sitting on third base, drinking this beer, having a good time, just waiting for some squib grounders to come into me. And Ronnie decides to step up and just ropes one down the left third base line that I literally had to matrix to make sure it didn't kill me, but I never spilled my beer. But years later, here we are. And why don't you just give a little bit of an introduction for some of our audience about, a little bit of your history and what's brought you to where we're going to have this chat today.
All right, thanks, Dallas. Yeah, so like Dallas says, I was a council member for 5 years prior to being the chief. I never really wanted to be the chief, but it was, lots of community members were asking, I think it's time for someone else to step up. And, I literally took right to the last 10 minutes, 4:30, the deadline. I already been nominated to be council. People asked if I wanted to be the chief, and I was, it's a big step. I think I talked with my family and, said, hey, if I do this and I'm elected, I'm going to be tied up for the next 4 years. But are you willing to give up your dad, give up your husband? I mean, a lot of commitment that needs to be made amongst the family. But I said, but I think if we are elected, with some new vision, we may go in the right direction of, just more economic development. I think that's something we've been talking about for years. Future councils or the previous councils, we all talked about economic development, but we didn't do enough of it. We had lots of vacant land for close to 13 years. We had a nice development area, and we had one tenant, really. We had our own gas station, and then we partnered up on a Lee's Chicken, so we were 50 or 49% owner of the chicken store. But then our first real tenant of leasing any land was Finning. So that helped, start the process of people recognizing that the nation is willing to lease to outside the community. I think that's a lot of perception that happens is the land is only for First Nation people, and that's not true. Like, we are open for business. We always, we want to lease whatever we can in our commercial development. But I think, you know, that was how I got into the role, was I was thinking economic development is what's going to push us going to the future. And obviously you mentioned Starbucks. So the Nation was the first licensed Starbucks in Canada, which I was very shocked because there's many Starbucks across this country that are on First Nation land. And I do believe there's one more that the same week that we signed, they also signed. So there is 2 licensed Starbucks across the country now. But that was a business that we were looking at the growth of the Nation. You know, we have a new administrative building that is being built. So we knew that we were going to have, you know, quite a few more tenants coming. BC Hydro is building another office building. You know, so we have potentially 300 to 400 staff members that are going to be amongst, you know, the businesses that are up on our commercial development. So, you know, we're always proactive in looking at, like, what are things that people need? And we're always driving around, and, you know, Starbucks is usually busy. Tim Hortons was just as busy. But, you know, we're looking at businesses that will help our employees as well. So I think we created 20 jobs just with the Starbucks alone. You know, that was something that, you know, we were hoping to target more of the students. I mean, those are entry-level jobs, but we actually had quite a few band members that, you know, we have a band, two managers are band members, but yeah, there's quite a few Indigenous people that are working there. But, you know, it's just a business that started up, and, you know, to create 20 jobs in one entity is pretty good.
You know, I think that's a good way to look at it, because on one of the earlier panels, we talked about, pardon me, we talked about building opportunities that don't necessarily have to be profit-driven businesses, but they have to be opportunities that provide entry for the community. You know, I think about some of the nieces and nephews that have gone through the Lee's Chicken. I think of the Shell station that really provided some good starting points for some people, but then some of the people who stayed with it and are playing a managerial role in that, and trying to be able to provide that opportunity for a wide skill set and age demographic of your community is something that I don't think people are starting to realize yet. You know, Weewakai Nation has always, you know, you've had Zakalootan Lodge was one of the first Indigenous-owned tourism lodges on the North Island anyway, but why don't you talk about some of the things that are happening there? I understand that you're looking at some changes for that great facility.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Alice. So generally our lodge was always just open for 6 months, and then lots of times it was, you know, it was closed for the other 6 months. But we did have, for a significant period of time, we did have Intertribal Health. They were using it for, I think, more wellness clinics, and then we kind of lost that contract quite a few years ago. So the lodge was back to just being open 6 months of the year. And then a couple of years ago, we had like trauma clinics that were coming in. And so we saw the need that, you know, for 6 months of the year, our health organization was able to fill the lodge with different workshops and clinics. And we saw this huge need. There was a wait list, and we're like, does it make sense to be opening for 6 months as a lodge and 6 months as a wellness center? Where do those 6 months of people go when they need help? I think, like, for us, I mean, the economics were the same value. So to us, it was like, let's shut it down as a lodge, and let's just help people for the full year. So that's our goal. We should be opening up in June. That's the plan. We had a bunch of renovations just to bring it up to code. But I think, you know, we wanted to really help with the mental health and addictions and having it as a treatment wellness center moving forward.
I think that's tremendous, because not only are helping to heal your community, but people from the surrounding communities I know will be able to take advantage, right? So.
Yeah, the goal was we wanted to focus on the North Island, basically from Comox north, but I mean, we are going to be open to the entire province. It's not just, but there is a huge need in that local area, so we thought, well, where better can they go somewhere close? But I mean, we will be open for everybody.
I think it's important to look at, you know, some of the opportunities that you're creating for community members that are going to continue to prove to show investment going forward. You talked about entry-level positions at the chicken franchise. Starbucks can be good for the students, especially in the summer. Those of you who don't know the location, it's in Campbell River, right on the highway, the bypass highway, beside the Shell station. You got the Finning there now. I believe Western Forest Products is moving up there. in the near future. So you got those different demographics kicking in, but I think of where we're going into the future, and having people get that experience at that younger age provides them the opportunity for growth. My brother Isaiah Robinson, somewhere around in the room, you know, he's the general manager of the Kitasoo ECDev Corporation. He's deputy chief counselor. He started his career at McDonald's. It gave him some of that skill set and that confidence that was necessary to deal with the public and other matters. And he's taken that and built it into this force to be reckoned with. I mean, I like to think I'm an important guy. Isaiah makes me look like a clown when it comes to his ability to fight for what's right for our people and going forward. And so just the fact that you have anyone from the age of 14 to their mid-20s getting some experience in the real world that they're going to be able to take for the rest of their lives going forward, that must be something for you to see as a council. As a young guy, so many of our brothers, as we grew up, didn't get that second opportunity that they needed. You know, we've lost a lot of people along the way, but how do you feel about that, seeing your community just have more options?
Yeah, no, that is the one big driving factor, right, is we want to just create as much employment as we can. Like you said, the Shell station, you know, we actually just received an award. I think we were the second dealer in Canada, or the top 5 dealers in Canada for Shell. We were number 2. So to think little town of Campbell River can have a store that profitable is pretty good. But yeah, definitely, you know, all these entry-level jobs, like you said, we've had, you know, guys start there and now they're managers there. And that's always been our goal, is to just promote within and just to keep creating more employment. I think that's also why we've got into the forestry business. You know, we've partnered up with the Roga Group, and we've created a forest company, which also expanded into the aggregate company now. But I think a lot of that was to get, you know, just guys that wanted to come back home, running machines, getting them a 9-to-5 job or a daily job rather than this fishing industry that's up and down. But I think that's where we really moved, is just about creating employment. You know, even in that positions, I think we've created 20 band member jobs, and I'm trying to remember, we have quite a few Indigenous that aren't band members, but we, you know, to create 20 new paying jobs there as well is a big thing in the last year.
I think we start to see that meaningful employment just start to. Checklist is a word that's been used in a good way and a bad way over the first few panels that we've had this morning, but it's only through actual real experience where we start to achieve some of these goals of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We talked about the elders and the people before us who pounded tables to bring awareness to the problems our community faced, and now we're starting to see more and more stories that continue to bring closure to that. So instead of saying, hey, we got a big problem over here, we got a big problem over here, it's more, we built some solutions to deal with some of these problems that we face. And the fact that we're able to share that with each other, I think, is something I know my community's looking at. As we bought a chunk of land in both yours and Chief Roberts' territory, we got addition to reserve status. We're far enough off the beaten track that any businesses we build out there aren't going to be in competition with yours. But you've showed us the ability that if you have some opportunity, you have some people, you can realize some of these goals of self-determination. And there's not one thing that leads to it. I think you've seen through the diversification that's been led by Chief Chickite, because you still are in that fishing industry. Personally, that's really your day job, isn't it? Is it not still?
It's still the day job, because I mean, this job's not guaranteed. I mean, I could be voted out next term, and I still need to go back to a job. So that's why I'm still actively fishing, because it's a job that I want to pass on knowledge too, right? Just like you know, anything that we've done, I think we want to continue that legacy. First Nation fishermen are obviously some of the best fishermen out there, so passing on that knowledge is key, especially in this industry today, where there's not a whole lot happening out in the world of the fishing industry.
Well, it's downsized so much that those of you who do it have to do it well, because the margin's gone. It's not like the old days where 100 boats went out and chased the same thing. You know, the fleet's been reduced by, what, 60%?
Maybe 80%. It's down, yeah.
So, you know, we talk about the development of resources and the management of resources. As you've built these companies, I mean, I got the pleasure of working with Art Wilson, who's part of your council. He's a general manager of our referrals office at Nanwakolas. But it's just great to see this next generation be able to take the baton on a little bit more seamlessly and don't get me wrong, as Domenico alluded to, there's still some tables that need to be pounded from time to time, but they're pounded with solutions and discussions on the table. So as you've been, as your forest company's been growing, what are some of the things you've learned about just, the partnerships that you need to build and develop?
Yeah, no, I mean, just having the right partner to help you get started was key for us. I mean, obviously, Domenico.
Is that Troy?
Yes, that's
Okay,
Troy.
just making sure. Sorry, Troy, I'm just messing with you a bit.
Yeah, no, and obviously Mosaic, they helped us out immensely to start the company. They offered us 35,000 meters to harvest. Now we're doing 100,000 meters for them, which is, great for us to, that's what created the jobs. But having those opportunities by these forest companies, and we've recently just purchased our own forest license as well. Obviously, the partnership with Western as well, but our own self as the nation, we just purchased 175,000 meters off of Western, or off of Interfor. So that's, something else that's going to help the nation be self-sufficient. I mean, we didn't want to wait around. I mean, that's why we went and self-funded this ourselves. Like, we got financing through First Nation Finance Authority, so we can, be prosperous in the near future.
And so, we talk about these businesses, and some of them are about creating opportunity for the community to get engaged, and some of them are about profit. What are some of the priorities of your nation as you start to develop some, investment opportunities and way to develop and increase your own source of revenue? What are some of the priorities that your council's investing in? Like the health center, obviously the healing center is something that's going to take some investment, but what are some of the priorities of your community?
Obviously the administrative building, because we are going to lease out 4 of the 5 floors. So, that's I think you guys are moving there. There is a bunch of opportunities, but I think just for us, it's development of lands is one. We have been buying up land in Campbell River. We recently purchased another 10 acres in the last year. 3 years ago, we purchased a sawmill that had 20 acres. So now we own 30 acres right across from our reserve, which we basically bought the first sawmill just to protect our gas station. At the time, it was one of those businesses that, it could have closed down at any time, but somebody could have bought in that land and, plopped up a gas station. Well, there's our competition right across the street. So I think we're just being proactive in looking long-term of how do we protect ourselves, but also what investments can we make? Obviously, housing is huge. I think that's where we're moving next with this 30 acres of land. And I think we've been investing also with other developers. Like, we recently invested in a Kelowna project where there was 2 apartment buildings, 96-unit apartment buildings. So we're not only just investing in Campbell River, we're investing throughout the province where we're able to use our money but get good returns on it.
That's excellent. I think, again, as someone who, I think it was 1995 when I first started working for the Kwakwaka'wakw Nations, hearing where we wanted to go and just seeing us spin our tires for so long. But just to be the refreshment, our brother Chris, now I've screwed up your name again, Chris Roberts, another young, educated, culturally grounded First Nations leader. We've started to sort of make our stamp on the North Island and Campbell River. You have a deep water port. Chris has the cruise ship terminal that we're looking at other options for. The Clowheads has built some opportunity in there for the rural community on the south end of Campbell River, and the deal with Western is a really good starting point because we're starting to realize that if we're involved in the infrastructure, none of these projects are going to go ahead without us. And I think that's one of the things you've seen with the younger leadership is there's a little bit less fear of failure. And we used to have such a conservative mindset in First Nation circles that, we knew what the problem was and we knew there was someone to blame, and we just got stuck there for a really long time. But having younger people start to step in and just challenge that question of why aren't we achieving some of these things has been something it's been really refreshing for me to see, both as a young man who watched us spin our wheels, but now it's given me the confidence as I've moved into a leadership role with my community to start being ready to say, I'm not afraid of taking that on. And, is that something you're starting to see throughout your council? I noticed, like I said, your demographics got younger. You've been there for 5 years for that, and then you've been chief for a while. Have you seen the evolution of the discussion change around your council table?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. That's a good point, McDowell's, because definitely stepping outside the box was something we weren't accustomed to. As you mentioned, lots of guys were on council and females, but we were in a generation that was mainly fishing. We didn't understand investments. If we aren't investing for ourselves, how would we really understand what investments the nation should be doing? So I think that's what's happened now is like you said, we have 4 council members who are under the age of 47. So, a lot of those guys understand investments, and that's partly why we're doing what we're doing. Just, we got to be proactive. We can't just, sit back and, not take chances, as I heard someone say today, that we have to take those risks. And I feel that's what's pushing us, right? Purchasing land, like, some of the councils, like, I don't know, it's kind of high, but it's like they're not making any land, and just, look at around. Everywhere is building. Like, if we buy that could be us building. I think that's what we need to do. Like, to get ahead, we got to take risks.
Definitely. One of the challenges that I know, your community and Chris has faced was the lack of a real relationship with the municipal governments. Maybe just give me some of your thoughts. I know both you and Chief Roberts played a large role in getting the current mayor elected. How have you seen the relationship with municipal and regional governments over the last few years?
Well, it's night and day. I think, like, just having, local government come in and talk to you. I was, like I said, with 5 years I was in council, not one person ever came. Like, I never saw a city mayor. I never saw the councils come in. And the new council that's running, they met with both nations, but that showed that they were willing to work with us, and I think that's what gets us ahead. We're collaborating on many things together. I think the city is really working. I think Rose is here. She's helping drive that, but it's just building that relationship. But just having the dialogue was the main thing. But like I said, nobody wanted to come talk to us, and I don't know why. Like, we're not vicious people.
Oh, wow. You are at the poker table, but I don't want to pump your head up too much in case we play tonight. We got Slido open, if those of you who might have any questions for the chief or myself on this discussion. But, carrying on, we do have some. With such intensive growth that your nation is experiencing with the leasing and land development, what are you doing to ensure the growth is balanced and structured? That's a great question.
So we do have quite a bit of land still left. I'm trying to think how many acres we have of development. We are in the stage of turning 160 more acres into an ATR. So we are looking to create another commercial development area once that's done. Obviously, housing is a key issue. So we are building new subdivisions right now. We are trying to balance both, but I think once the new addition comes in, that'll set us off for a bit.
These are good challenges to have as we're going forward. And I see this question, can you speak to your thoughts and opportunities for Indigenous nations in ecotourism? I know Rebecca Spit is world renowned, and that's been under Cape Mudge management for a very long time, goes back before my time.
Early
anyway.
70s or
late, 70s?
Yeah, I believe so. But yeah, we do have 2 campsites. They are doing fairly well, but I think that's every campsite in BC, I think, is doing well. COVID really turned things around when everybody started buying campers, and just getting the location. I think we developed more sites. We opened up trying to appease the bigger, the Winnebago type or the bigger trailers that more and more this glamping type. But I think that's, we had to take those risks. We had to open up more land, but I think it's definitely helped out.
So this is a good one, and this was sort of alluded to during our session this morning on Lakwasamuk. Can you speak to them? Oh, sorry, that changed one. Can you speak to the collaborations with neighboring First Nations? We're all in the treaty process. We're all sort of doing our own thing, and we've gotten to the point where we need to figure out how we're going to coexist. Maybe just give me some of your thoughts on that. I know there's good parts that's working really well, and I know there's still some stuff that needs to be worked through, but why don't you just give us some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. In the past, I think we had a lot of egos, in the past that didn't like to work with each other. But, you know, as Chris sits over there, him and I are, you know, the younger generation, and I think, you know, that's how we get ahead. We have to work together. I mean, strength in numbers, as Chief Price keeps talking about from Comox, that we also work with. That's a partner on the TFL 64. But I think just, you know, being able to sit down and communicate is one of the biggest things. You know, we meet a couple times a year, councils, like, you know, we are, like, I think that's what gets us through things, is just being able to have that dialogue.
I think, you know, as someone who's had a front row observer seat for that, and I was there in the old school when some of those egos just wouldn't let us try solve some of these problems were there, and that created the animosity between sitting mayors and councils. And we always I used to watch the mayor of Campbell River threaten the chief of Cape Mudge about infrastructure, and then I just watched us go without. The city of Campbell River wasn't able to develop some of the opportunities that they had because we couldn't agree on the infrastructure needs around sewer and water and some of those things. And to be able to see that start to change to a point where Campbell River can't build enough houses, Weewakai can't build enough houses, Weewakam can't build enough houses. Do you just see that continuing to a point where we sit down and agree that infrastructure is infrastructure? It doesn't matter whether it's First Nations or local community. We need to get on the same page on some of those things.
For sure. I think, like, in any government or any local municipality, for growth, we all need to work together. And I think in the past, our relationship wasn't the strongest with the city. And, you know, the city focused more on areas not, you know, closer to the reservations. And now that those lands are filled up and we have land that needs to be developed, you know, infrastructure needs to be changed. And I think those are things that, you know, we're overlooked, but I think we're getting there. But I think as long as we're all able to communicate and work together, we all get ahead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. Can you speak to the importance of youth? You know, we talked about the youth getting jobs in here. We talked about the transition of the generational gap that existed in leadership. You know, we've been lucky as Kwakwaka'wakw people that our culture was never completely taken away from us. The Kwakwaka'wakw have continued potlatching during the bans, and we kept our languages moving. And I know you have a first-rate language program with June Johnson and some of the cultural work that they're doing. But just some of your thoughts on the youth and having the ability to sort of have it all.
Yeah, no, I think, like I've heard earlier, you know, the youth are our next generation, and that's what's, you know, going to carry us forward. And I think if we're able to teach them at a younger age, like I think, you know, just looking at the language program, the ones that all come out of our Head Start programs, you know, they're like sponges. And I think that's why we're trying to work with our youth more, our youth programs. You know, we want to teach them everything that'll help them move on in life. You know, investment being one of them, like even financial literacy courses. You know, that's something we're planning on doing, just so people understand that at an early age you can start investing. I mean, you know, even if it's starting at $20 a week, like just little things, but we want to be able to teach our youth, but they're key to us.
Well, I think in this day of affordability and all the challenges that we're facing around food security, I think having people understand the value of economics and that is so important going forward. I mean, there's those of us who've been given a few opportunities to try things, but I think the more process we can put around our youth to help them engage in some of these things, to not be afraid of it, to understand the challenge of the affordability crisis, but to be able to say, okay, if I'm working in this job making blank here, if I take, you know, 5% of that paycheck and invest it in this, it's just going to continue to grow. I've noticed one of the things that First Nations communities are getting better at now is starting to pass on more than just traditional ecological knowledge. You watch the other cultures in the world, they pass on value and investment and not necessarily fortune from money, but they pass on property rights and other things. You know, as you're starting to build more and more community housing, you know, do you hope that just continues to be generational, where someone owns a house, they're going to be able to pass that down to their next generation, instead of the old days with abandoned housing? You know, it's like, oh, sorry, your so-and-so died, but the next person on the list wants to move in.
Well, I think that's what might separate us from other nations. Obviously, we don't have any social housing. Every house that is owned by a band member, so it's not, you know, so you can pass that on. Just one thing I was thinking about, we're talking about investing, but The nation is also starting its own heritage fund. You know, we had one specific claim recently where we paid out X amount of dollars, but you know, the rest of it we're going to invest. And we also have another, I think we're calling it a significant specific claim coming that should exceed the large numbers that these other nations are getting. But I mean, those are things that we want to invest. So, you know, people have always mentioned, why don't we just give it out? But it's like, if we invest, this is what it's going to make, and we can show. And I think having that number longer term, they'll get more in the end rather than, you know, having that quick cash in their pocket.
So, again, this is another one of those conversations, and I mean, that's the luxury of working with some of these great chiefs and leaders, is I get to have these discussions on a daily basis, and I want to thank the crowd for being engaged. I know it's been a long day. I've definitely had this microphone in my hand for too long today, so I'm going to pass it over to Logan and wrap this up, and I think Logan's got a little bit of housekeeping on just the rest of the evening, but let's give Chief Ronnie Chickite a round of applause. And just one more thing quickly. I believe Jordan Point left before you had a chance to speak because you guys took down the First Nations Fisheries Council golf tournament by such a wide margin, he's going to have a hard time looking in the eye. But
He already asked. He already told me the date. Are you guys coming back to defend? So he knows we're coming.
Good stuff. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for sticking around so long. Just before we head into our reception, I'd just like to announce the winners of the Fur Canada Silent Auction. As you know, the funding collected from this silent auction will be donated to the Fur Canada Education Program and the Native Women's Association of Canada, and I'm very pleased to say that we've raised $6,850 for those programs. So our winners this evening who can pick up their prizes at the registration desk are Sharon Singh, Chief Judy Desjardins, Azar Cameron, Diane Morrison, Lee Stalker, Jed Johns, Shauna Norman, George Lamprou, Stephen Hofer, and Richard Hare. So thank you all just once again for joining us for the 8th Indigenous Resource Opportunities Conference, Day 1. The bar is going to open at about 4:30, but please stick around for our reception. If you have dinner tickets, they should be a black ticket in the back of your pass. Dinner's going to start right at 6, so we look forward to seeing you there if you have a ticket. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for the beginning of Day 3. Thank you so much.